Today's webinar is brought to you by Eli Lilly, and it's the last of our weight management series. And it's titled Mastering Diabetes, Nutrition, Weight Loss, and Wellness Strategies. We know that weight management is top of mind for everyone, and it's always identified as a topic of interest for our members. Our expert today is Connie Brown-Riggs, and she's not a stranger to Diabetes Sisters, and she's back to share her expertise on the management of weight. Constance is an award-winning registered dietitian, nutritionist, certified diabetes care and education specialist, and is the author of several diabetes-related books, two of which received the Hermes Gold Creative Awards, Living Well with Diabetes, the 14-Day Devotional, and the Diabetes Guide to Enjoying Foods of the World. Over the course of her career, Constance has established herself as an expert in nutrition, diabetes, and the cultural issues that impact the health and healthcare of people of color. Her work has appeared in books for health professionals and healthcare consumers. Constance is a former member of the board of directors for the Association of Diabetes Care and Education Specialists and a past chair of the Diabetes Dietetic Practice Group of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. You can learn more about her at www.eatingsoulfully.com and follow her on Instagram at Your Diabetes Nutrition Expert. Please help me welcome Constance Brown-Riggs.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna. Good morning, everyone, or I should say good afternoon. It is past 12 Eastern Time. These are our objectives for today. Going to help you understand the impact that obesity has on diabetes and blood glucose management, explore a variety of approaches to incorporate healthier food choices into your daily life, learn 7 strategies for mindful eating, and finally discuss tips and strategies for staying the course. So we're going to start by exploring the connection between obesity and diabetes, particularly how carrying excess weight, especially in the form of visceral fat or belly fat, how that impacts blood glucose control and increases the risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Now, if we're eating high-fat, high-calorie diet, we know that that can cause excessive calories, and those excessive calories lead to additional weight, excessive weight gain. Unfortunately, when we gain those calories, we are taking in that extra energy, it accumulates in the form of fat. And the type of fat, as just mentioned previously, that accumulates is visceral fat. And that visceral fat is the fat that surrounds the organs in the body, the liver, the pancreas, and the intestines. So it's not the fat that you can actually pinch on your stomach. Again, it's often referred to as belly fat, but it's not the actual fat that you're able to pinch. It's much deeper than that, and it's the fat that surrounds the organs, the liver, pancreas, and intestines. And that fat also, one of the many disturbances that happens as a result of that fat is that it does release chemicals that actually cause inflammation in the body. And so you end up with chronic inflammation. And that inflammation is what increases the risk for additional problems in the body. Insulin, it affects the insulin sensitivity of the tissues like the muscle and the liver. So it makes them less sensitive to the action of insulin. And as we move on, looking at our flow chart, what also happens as a result of that fat accumulation, inflammation, is insulin and leptin resistance. So as far as insulin resistance, that happens as a result of, as I said, the fat accumulation. the pancreas is going to be producing excessive amounts of insulin as a result of that insulin resistance. And what also happens is there is that leptin resistance. And the leptin, that is a hormone that actually tells the brain when you're full. It helps us to regulate our eating. But with leptin resistance, the brain doesn't receive that signal to stop eating. And that actually can lead to overeating. And of course, that just exacerbates the obesity. And then finally, the final step along this continuum is the actual development of type 2 diabetes. So over time, as with the insulin resistance, as that progresses, the pancreas has been working over time, and it reaches a point that it's no longer able to keep up. And the end result of that is that persistent elevation in blood sugar, and that goes on, leads to the actual development of type 2 diabetes. So with the leptin resistance, the good news there is that can be reversed. So the body can adjust to that. We're going to look at leptin a little bit more down the road. We'll talk about the hunger hormones and how they impact the body. So this gives you an overview of that relationship between obesity and diabetes. And for individuals that already have diabetes, of course, obesity makes it that much more difficult to manage. The good news is that even with a modest amount of weight loss, how that can impact the body can have profound impact on the body. And it doesn't take a lot of weight loss for you to reap the benefit. So we're looking at just about 5 to 10% of body weight. If you're about 200 pounds, that would equate to about 10 to 20 pounds of weight loss. So as I always tell my clients, we're not looking for you to get into a bikini, but we do want a little bit of weight, and that little bit of weight loss can go a long way. It can actually help your body, excuse me, use its own insulin better. And when you're losing that weight, especially losing that around the abdominal area, it helps to make the insulin more effective. It improves blood sugar control. And then, of course, it reduces the need for medication. So if you're losing weight, you're having less insulin resistance, that can actually lower the amount of insulin as well as oral medication that you may be using. It improves your cholesterol level. What happens there generally is the bad cholesterol, the LDL, goes down, and the good cholesterol, the HDL cholesterol, goes up with weight loss. Also reduces the risk of heart disease as well as lowering blood pressure. So there are many benefits that come along with a small amount of weight loss. As I said, it goes a long way. So when it comes to managing diabetes, one of the common questions I get is, what's the best diet for diabetes? I can't tell you how many times I've been asked this question. And the answer is really simple. The best diet is the one you will follow. So there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to eating for diabetes management. And the key is really finding the pattern that works best for you. One that's enjoyable, should be sustainable, and most important, it should fit into your lifestyle. So what works for one person may not work for another. And that's okay. The most important thing is consistency. A diet you can follow regularly and long term, that's what's going to give you the best results as far as managing diabetes, managing your blood sugars, and your overall health. Now, in 2019, the American Diabetes Association released a consensus report. It's called the Nutrition Therapy Consensus Report for adults with diabetes and prediabetes. And that report highlights a variety of meal patterns that are considered to be acceptable for people with diabetes. And so we'll look at that briefly over in the next two slides. We shall walk through them. So as you look across the top of the slide, far to your left, you'll see eating pattern, and then it goes over looking at the diabetes risk, A1C, TGs, triglycerides, CV, cardiovascular risk, cholesterol, LDL, bad cholesterol, HDL, good cholesterol, as well as weight. So research, looking at research, it shows which of these patterns, how they're, or I should say, how all of these patterns are actually acceptable for individuals with diabetes. For an example, if we look at the Mediterranean diet, you can see pretty much it works across the board. But all of them, as far as managing diabetes, reducing diabetes risk, are comparable there. So we have the U.S. dietary guidelines, the Mediterranean, as well as vegetarian. And then we have low fat, very low fat, and DASH diet as well. And DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So there is that variety of meal patterns that are acceptable for managing diabetes. And what determines which one you choose is which one you feel you're going to be able to follow and sustain for the long haul. Okay, so they've all been shown to improve blood sugar control, to reduce cardiovascular risk, and support weight management. And that, of course, is when they're followed on a consistent basis. Excuse me. So one of the reasons that these meal patterns are all acceptable is that they share some common features that are beneficial for individuals with diabetes. And they all emphasize whole, unprocessed foods like fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and healthy fats, minimizing added sugars and refined grains, and prioritizing foods that support heart health and that will help to manage blood pressure as well as cholesterol, which, of course, all of those things are crucial for individuals with diabetes. So a variety of eating patterns are acceptable for managing diabetes. Now, one of the other things that was summarized in the consensus report, and I think it's important just to highlight that, is the importance of individualization in terms of meal patterns. It needs to be based on your personal and your cultural preferences. Oftentimes, this isn't taken into consideration when individuals are giving a meal plan. And of course, that may be the reason that the meal plan is not successful, because it's not personalized for that individual. You know, we don't want to just rip off meal plans off a sheet and give that to an individual. It needs to be based on that individual's lifestyle, their access to healthy food, and then most of all is their willingness and ability to make behavior change or to follow through with any recommendations. And then, of course, we always want to maintain the pleasure of eating. So again, it doesn't mean you have to give up those foods that you grew up on in order to make progress, achieve whatever the weight goal is. those foods can still be included in the meal plan. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide or two, actually. Okay, and then of course, to provide the individual with practical tools, and that's what we're getting ready to do. Look at those practical tools that will allow you to follow the meal plan while enjoying the taste of that healthy food. Okay, so this brings us to the helpful tools, and one of the I'll say most helpful tools is mindful eating. And so we will look at mindful eating and how actually focusing in on mindfulness, how that can help us become more aware of what we're eating, that it also can actually enrich the enjoyment that we get from eating, and also looking to simplify the daily management of diabetes. Okay, so how many food decisions do you make each day? So just think about that. Approximately how many food decisions do you think you make in a day? And if we look at research, according to research, the average person makes about 200 decisions per day. And that's a lot. And of course, the reason why we don't know offhand, or we just really don't think about it. So we're probably eating mindlessly most of the time. But let's just use breakfast as an example. All right, and you're probably making about 20 to 30 choices just in breakfast alone. So if you're going to have a breakfast, let's say eggs, fruit, toast, and coffee, small breakfast. But if we think about the eggs, it's, well, how many eggs are you going to have? How are you going to prepare those eggs? Are you using oil? Are you using butter? Are you adding salt? Are you adding cheese? So all of those decisions, that's just on the eggs. And then the fruit. What kind of fruit? Is it fresh fruit? Is it canned fruit? Is it frozen fruit? How much of that fruit are you going to eat? As far as toast, is it white toast, whole wheat toast, rye? What's going to be on the toast? Is it peanut butter? Are you going to add jam or just butter, margarine? Coffee, is it going to be caffeinated or decaf coffee? Are you going to have milk in it or creamer? You're going to use sugar or sweetener? So all of these are decisions that we make. And because we generally are eating mindlessly, we don't think of all the decisions that go into actual eating and meal planning. And that's just one meal. So that again highlights all the thought processes that go on in choosing our food. So we know now that, we're making a lot of decisions, but let's focus in on the core principles that are involved as far as mindful eating is concerned. So it's unlike sleeping and breathing, those are automatic processes. Eating requires deliberate engagement. And you just saw that briefly by thinking about the choices that you're making, the decisions that you're making for that meal. And by practicing mindful eating, we bring more awareness and intentionality to these choices. And so here are the core principles. The first one is bring awareness to nourishing properties, thinking of the properties of the food. And this means paying attention to the way food is prepared and consumed, focusing on how it nourishes our body. Consider the flavor, the textures, and nutrients as part of the experience. And then 2 is, I think I went one slide too many. Okay, second is select enjoyable and nutritious food. So with mindful eating, it's about finding a balance, choosing foods that are both enjoyable and packed with nutrients. This allows you to nourish your body while also enjoying the pleasure of eating. And the third principle is acknowledge food preferences non-judgmentally. All right, so it's important to recognize your food preference without guilt or judgment. All right, mindful eating is actually giving us permission to enjoy fun foods, of course, in moderation, but we don't want to label any food good or bad. So it's non-judgmental eating. And then to honor physical hunger and satiety cues. So it's listening to your body's signals. Eat when you're hungry and stop when you're satisfied. And this principle helps to prevent overeating and supports a healthier relationship with food. And then use wisdom to guide eating decisions. Combine practical knowledge. Okay, so it's like understanding your nutritional needs with that inner wisdom to guide your eating choices. And that actually helps you make decisions that align with your health goals without feeling restricted. Okay, so by practicing those principles, it helps us to cultivate a healthier, more enjoyable relationship with food. And again, it's all rooted in mindfulness and balance. Then we want to think about the mindful eating cycle. Okay, so most people are eating for millions of reasons other than actual physical hunger. So the first question is why? Why do I eat? Why am I eating this? And then to look at what is the trigger? Is it really physical hunger? Is it a challenging situation that you find yourself in? Or is it a visual cue that arises? Is it stress? Is it fatigue or boredom? So it's really important to understand why you're eating. And then, of course, when? When are you eating? Is it dependent on the clock? Is it simply because it says 12 o'clock, that's lunchtime? Or is it because you're hungry? Is it based on those physical hunger cues or emotions? And then what do I eat? You want to think about that. What are you actually eating? And again, kind of why with that as well. So are you choosing foods based on convenience? Is it taste? Is it comfort? Or is it actually for nourishment? Okay. And how do I eat? Okay, so this is, are you eating while you're busy looking at your phone? Are you eating in the car? Are you eating on the go? How are you eating? And then how much? All right, is again thinking of the physical. Is it based on physical fullness, how much you eat, or is it based on the package size? If you get a large bag of chips, you'll eat the whole bag. If it's a small bag of chips, you'll eat the whole bag. So is it dependent on the package size? Is it peer influence or habit? So again, how much are you eating? And to really think about the way that you're eating that food. And then, of course, there's where. And the where is where do you invest your energy? Okay, so eating can be invigorating or it can cause you to be sluggish. So naturally, if you're overeating, you're stuffing, you're going to not have much energy. You're going to feel sluggish. Whereas if you're eating just the right amount, you may actually feel invigorating after having that meal. Does it lead to guilt or shame? So depending on what that meal consisted of, it may lead to guilt or shame. Okay, so how is the energy used? Is it used during work? You know, you're eating to nourish the body to work, or are you going out to play? So these are all parts of mindful eating, what you want to think about and identify. And of course, it may sound like a lot, you know, as you look at it on the screen, but it does take time, it takes practice, and it is something that everyone can achieve to be more mindful with their eating. Part of the challenge, if you will, as far as mindless eating is concerned, is that food is everywhere. Okay, it's just about every corner you go on, find a store or a 7-Eleven or something that you can get food. Gas stations. Years ago, you weren't able to go into the gas station and get a full meal. Now you can go and sit down and eat if you want. So it's that convenience, having food everywhere, fast food, ready to eat meals, um, automatic eating. So, you know, we're eating on autopilot as opposed to really being more mindful when we're eating. You might have had the experience yourself where you're working and you're eating, okay? And I'll use myself. I had a sandwich and I'm working and eating the sandwich, okay? Shouldn't do that, but nonetheless, I'm working, eating the sandwich, and all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm like, what happened to my sandwich? I had eaten it, but I definitely didn't get any enjoyment from it. And I couldn't believe it was gone already. I was looking around on my desk for the rest of the sandwich and then thinking, did I get up and move? Did I put it someplace else? So this is what happens with automatic eating and not really paying attention, being distracted while eating. And then, of course, emotional eating. Then we're just putting food in, stuffing feelings. And also, lack of planning leads to mindless eating as well. Okay. And then, of course, in environmental cues, just the TV, as I said, phone, computer, plates, the plate size, going to buffets, all of these things are triggers for mindless eating. But mindful eating, the adjustment is, think of it as just the opposite. We want to sit down and have our meals. We want to eat off a plate, not out of a bag. And of course, we don't want to eat out of a platter. We want to make sure it is a plate and use, as I said, the environment to stock your environment with healthier choices, which makes it easier to have more of a mindful choice. And the typical recommendation, avoid shopping when hungry, is definitely you end up picking up everything at that point. And then sustainable eating, it's not about a strict diet or always denying yourself, but it's about finding that balance, all right, a harmonious relationship with food. Excuse me. And then we don't want to always indulge either, right? So again, it's that balance between thinking of always denying, is that sustainable? Does it work for the long term? But always indulging, is that sustainable? Is that helpful? So it's finding the balance. It's asking yourself before you indulge in something, do I really want this? And is it worth it? And it's amazing how effective it can, excuse me, it can be when you just stop, take a second, and ask yourself that question. Is it worth it? Do I really want this? And if the answer is yes, if you decide it's worth it, I really want it, then you eat it and you move on from there. It's done. There's no guilt or feeling bad. You made the decision. You were in control. Okay. And of course, as we say, you want to savor that moment. You also can use what we call a redirecting tool. So to use redirecting to indulge in healthier choices, excuse me. So if you enjoy strawberries dipped in yogurt with chocolate chips, have that instead of a bowl of ice cream. Okay, so it satisfies your craving, but it also takes longer to prepare and enjoy, which also enhances the eating experience. And as I said earlier, it's not necessarily something that is easy, but practice makes perfect. So, always think in terms of redirecting, okay? And those choices, in order to redirect and make it successful, you've got to practice it every single day. And as I said, with asking yourself if it's worth it is so important. And then in asking if it's worth it, think in terms of what are the consequences? If I eat this, what are the consequences? It's going to make my blood sugars go high. I'm going to feel sluggish. I'm going to feel miserable. And then you'll say, well, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Am I willing to accept the consequence of that? And if your answer is yes, you eat it and you move on. You don't beat yourself up for it. So it's becoming more mindful. The hunger scale is definitely a valuable tool in terms of becoming more of a mindful eating, making mindful decisions. And of course, the goal is to fall somewhere in the middle, somewhere between 4 and 6. So 4 is you're beginning to feel hungry. 5, you're satisfied. You're not hungry. You're not full. And then slightly full, pleasantly full. You never want to be at 1 or definitely not 10. You don't want to be at those ends. You want to try to fall somewhere in the middle. So it's evaluating. It's before you're eating something, think about where does your hunger lie? Where are you on the hunger scale? Now, before we can change, we've got to understand where the problems are. Where does that problem lie? Okay, and that's where most people fall short. Why change is so hard for them is because they don't know where the problems are. Okay, so if you find yourself, so it's exploring the reasons for your eating habits. Okay, so if you find yourself eating processed foods frequently, as an example, the question is why? And then identifying what the problem is. Is it an environmental factor? Not having the food available, healthy food available? Is it pressure from peers? Is it going out to eat with friends that causes the problem? Is it simply lack of preparation, right? Not thinking ahead, not planning ahead. So it's really identifying where the problems are. And then from there, you can go on and begin to make the change. And it takes a little bit of work to identify the problems. One of the ways of helping you to do that is by journaling. And I'm skipping ahead. We'll get to journaling in the next slide or two as well. So we're going to look at several mindless tools, again, utilizing the hunger scale. All right, definitely important to stay in the middle ground. And between using the hunger scale and entering that information in your journal, it's going to help you to identify, to put the whole picture together, I should say, so that you're able to see what you're doing, how hungry you were, what you actually ate, how you felt after you ate it. All of those things will help you to begin put the picture together so that you can make those changes and become more of a mindful eater. We mentioned earlier the hunger hormones, and this is important to understand what's going on in the body. The ghrelin, if you look on your left-hand side, we're looking at before eating. Okay, so ghrelin is produced in the stomach, okay, and the intestines, and ghrelin is known as the hunger hormone, okay, and it's released to actually drive eating. It signals, it lets us know that we need to put food in the system. And then we have leptin, that's in the red area, the red box there. Leptin, that's produced by the fat cells, and it acts as an appetite suppressant. All right, so it helps us to recognize that we've eaten enough, we're done, we don't need to eat anymore. And as we talked about leptin resistance earlier, when that occurs, the brain does not receive the signal that you've eaten enough and to stop eating. And so that's part of that whole cycle, vicious cycle, if you will, that can happen in terms of hunger and satiety. If our hormones are thrown off, it makes it very difficult for us to regulate our appetite and regulate what we're eating. So as we say, it's not you, it's the hormones. And why, eating, maintaining weight is not simple. It doesn't mean we can't achieve it. We see that happen every day. We see people able to balance it, but it's all part of that picture of being mindful and recognizing what's going on and what's happening in our body. Okay, so then journaling. This is our mindfulness tool number 3. And you can get a lot of good information when you're keeping a good journal. And it doesn't mean you have to, excuse me, you have to journal for the rest of your life. But if you take time to do it for a week or so, you'll be amazed at the amount of information you're able to discover. And so it's, when you're getting ready to have the meal, you want to evaluate, all right? You want to track. Am I hungry? What is my hunger level on the scale? Am I full? Am I feeling stuffed? And this would be before, during, and after the meal and snacks. You want to take note of these things and write down as much information as possible. And that will help you in the end to see what the pattern is, to see when you're overeating. Is it every time when you're overeating? Is it because you were extremely hungry before you started the meal? Were you preoccupied? Were you upset? Was it a day that you were under a great deal of stress? The more information you put in the journal, the better you're going to be able to set goals and start making changes. And the change is not going to happen overnight, but by identifying where the problem is, and 2, deciding which part of that problem you want to work on first. Small, gradual changes or sustainable changes. And then, of course, slowing down. Most people are eating much too fast, and again, not paying attention to what they're eating. So it's so important. I always say, put your knife and your fork down while you're eating. If you're eating a sandwich, take a bite, put that sandwich down on the plate. You want to chew at least 15 to 30 times each bite that you put in your mouth. So it's really slowing down, being very deliberate about what you're doing. And when you slow down, that helps you to really think about the food that you're eating. How does it feel in your mouth? What is the texture? How does it feel going down? How does it smell? So all of those things you're able to take in. Notice the colors. Before you begin, look at the plate. Look at the balance of colors. Is it a beautiful plate? My husband's always showing me, look at this plate. Just look how good this looks. So it's really taking time to take it in before you eat it. So slow down. And then, of course, recognizing stress eating. So before you start paying attention, you want to hit that pause button. What's going on? Am I stressed? Can I, instead of eating, can I go out and do some physical activity? Because, you know, it's not hunger that's causing it, it's all stress. So what can you do to de-stress? Again, we think of making those deliberate changes. So redirect rather. So if you really feel, you know, that you're hungry, you want to make sure it's a smart choice that you're making. And then if it is stress as well, it's how can you de-stress? What can you do to help? Okay, so is it building a support system? Is it seeking professional help? Is it something that yoga and relaxation can help you with? But it's really recognizing stress eating is so important. And then, of course, know the triggers and how to redirect. And I kind of went over that. Okay, so understanding external triggers, which can be the environment. You know, is it so much going on that you're not able to really make a good choice? Your mind is cluttered. An example, if you have driving a bus while all the passengers are fighting to steer it in a different direction, all right? So they're all trying to get into the driver's seat, and then there's no calmness or organization going on at that point. So when we have a lot of environmental triggers, when the mind is cluttered, very difficult to make a good decision. Internal triggers would be thoughts and feelings. Okay, and then also could be the physiological state. So you want to stay attuned to your body's signals of hunger. As I mentioned, fatigue, low energy, what is going on, and do you need to redirect? Okay, so the redirect strategy, that's having that plan. So when you do find yourself under stress, all right, everything going on around you, how can you change your thought process? How can you change the outcome, change what you're doing? Okay, so if your goal is to choose a healthy snack and your environment, all you have are cookies, you know, then you've got to redirect and change the plan. So that may be making sure that you have fruit available. If it's at work and the pantry at work, all they have is cookies, then your redirect strategy is going to be to bring with you a healthy snack because you can't rely on what they have in the pantry. Okay, and then healthy eating, okay, as we say, what are you asking your food to do? So you want to think about that. Are you asking your food to provide comfort? Is it for fuel? Is it to nourish the body, prevent disease? Is it to entertain? So what are your expectations? And the important thing is to really manage those expectations. And food is going to nourish the body. It may not bring comfort. It may not bring emotional comfort in the way that you're thinking. And should we expect it to bring emotional comfort? So these are all parts of the evaluation process. Think about what you're asking your food to do and whether or not it's realistic, and if you have realistic expectations. Cooking healthy. All right, this is another one of those areas where there's a lot of myths and common beliefs. One of the misconceptions is that it takes a lot of time to cook healthy, to eat healthy. It takes a lot of money, and it really doesn't. And the important thing is having motivation. That's number one, motivation to begin to eat healthier, and then identify, what type of skill level you have in terms of preparation, and then actual execution. So as far as preparation, starting off with simple recipes, because you want to be successful. We know success breeds success. So starting off with simple recipes, and then setting, 1 or 2 days a week that you're actually going to do meal preparation. You're going to cook a meal those 2 days. So again, small steps always, but cooking healthy is part of that mindfulness, and that it doesn't have to be, this major deal. It takes you 2-3 hours in the kitchen. Okay. SMART goals. So we've gone through all the tools, and ideally with journaling, you've identified where your areas are that require, or that you should try to make some behavior change. You don't want to start with all of them. You pick one, and then you want to set a SMART goal for that particular behavior change. And a SMART goal is one that is specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. Okay, so for an example, if it is to start, let's say walking, you haven't done any exercise, so walking is what we're going to look at, which is attainable. We're not talking about jogging or running a marathon. So the specific goal is to walk, measurable, 3 times a week. It is attainable because it's 3 times a week. Relevant, it's walking for physical activity. The time bound would be, we'll say, 15 minutes after meals. So now we've got a real specific goal. So not just saying I want to walk, but it's when, how much, and so on. Okay. And this list is incorporating healthier food choices as far as maintaining mindful eating. You want to, and of course, health and blood glucose levels, is focus on whole foods, prioritize whole foods, portion control, carbohydrate quality, which matters. All right, so we want more complex carbohydrate. Timing of meals, eating consistently throughout the day, that helps prevent the highs and the lows. And of course, hydration, which so many people forget, is so important. Drinking water, other non-sweetened beverages definitely help. And we know regular drinking of water can prevent false hunger cues, which is so important. Okay, so we've put a lot of, given you a lot of information in, well, not such a short period of time, but you've got quite a bit of information. And mindful eating, it's amazing how that can actually help you as far as achieving your goals, whether it is for weight loss or simply just eating healthier and not feeling stuffed and sluggish from your meals throughout the day. Okay, so thank you for your attention, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Connie. That was great. Very excellent, very unique and different. And I love those 8 the tools, the 8 tools for really mindful eating. So that was really amazing. And somebody did put into the chat that would the tools and resources be available, because they're excellent. And I did tell her that this presentation will be on demand so they could review them as often as they need to. So we have a few minutes, and we have 2 questions. I know we're running over a little bit, but there's 2 questions. The first question comes from Diane. How do you assess a person's weight loss for women with PCOS?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the question. How do you assess?
That's somebody with weight loss if they have PCOS.
It would be a matter of determining what they're eating and calculating, what their weight should be. I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, because regardless of what the medical condition is,
Right.
the assessment part would be to gather what are they taking in, a food diary for maybe 5 days,
Right.
assess that, do the whole workup, the height, the weight, what the weight should be. So it's really looking at all of those factors.
Yeah, very good. And I think too, looking at medication therapies, it's really looking at the whole
Exactly.
person.
Yes.
Is a good point. Great.
Yeah.
And then this question comes from Alejandra. How do you find good options when I eat outside the house?
Well, nowadays it's a little bit easier than it used to be. Even if you go into, I use 7-Eleven as an example. If you go to 7-Eleven, they're talking about kind of like convenience stops. They generally will have some type of salad. They may have a fruit packet with a piece of cheese, a piece of fruit, nuts. They have those combinations. I always say you can't go wrong going to a diner. At a diner, you're able to order a piece of chicken, roast chicken, fish. They always have that. Salads are available. So it's really just, I use the word all day, but mindful and taking a minute to think about it, because most often there's something there that you're able to eat. And not to be thrown off also, think all or nothing at all. You can go into, I don't know, fried food place, all right? Fish and chips, everything is fried. And still, by taking the coating off the piece of fish, you're cutting back on carbs, you're cutting back on some of the calories and so on. So it's really just taking a moment to think about it and not be totally derailed because you did end up at the fried food place.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you, Connie. And then we had some questions related to emotional eating and stress, but I think your presentation, that was prior to your presentation, I think you addressed that beautifully during your talk. So due to the fact that we're a bit out of time, I just want to say a big thank you to Connie for a wonderful presentation. Connie did put together a really neat tip sheet that really focuses on seasonings with proteins and how to kind of like enhance the taste of proteins, especially if you're kind of like moving away from carbs. So go to our website to download that. That'll be available for you after the presentation. Also, what's coming up next? We'll be kicking off a series on inhaled insulin. We have 2 great speakers lined up starting on October 15th, Diana Isaacs, a PharmD. She'll be doing a deep dive into inhaled insulin at 12 noon Eastern. And Ginger Vieira, a woman living with diabetes, will be bringing home to a workshop on the 23rd at 12 and 7 p.m. And she'll be sharing her personal perspectives on inhaled insulin. So bring your thoughts and questions and join her on October 23rd. And then on October 24th, we'll be covering a very special topic, talking about hearing loss and is there a relationship to diabetes? And it's going to be presented by Joanne Rinker. She's a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and she's has a specialty around hearing and hearing loss. So it's going to be very, very different and very interesting topic. So sign up. And these are all recorded and available on demand for your viewing pleasure. So again, a big thanks to Lily for sponsoring this event. A big thanks to Connie. Your information is always so well received and wonderful. Go ahead and download her tip sheet. It's available for download on our website. So thank you for joining, everyone. Have a great day. We hope to see you in October. Bye-bye.